Hello, Trail Seeker, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Learn True Health podcast. During today's interview, Brad mentions a discount that he's giving my listeners. I think that's awesome. And then afterwards, he realized that the way his website works, it's best just to give a link. And so I just wanted to clarify that I have the link for you. It's learntruehealth.com/oxygen. That's learntruehealth.com/oxygen. And if you go there and decide to purchase the kit that he talks about, then you'll be given the listener discount by using that link. And you should see the coupon code already propagate. He's giving actually two coupon codes depending on the kit. And I didn't want to make anything confusing. So just go to the website, learntruehealth.com/oxygen. I'm going to leave all this in the show notes of today's podcast, though, with the two coupon codes, just in case you go to that website and you don't see the coupon code. I wanted to make sure that you have it. And then I don't expect you to have any problems. In fact, I expect this to all be wonderful and smooth. But if you do with anything that I recommend, by the way, and I only recommend things I really, really believe in and I know will help you as they have helped myself or they've helped people I know, or I've done a ton of research and I see that the company stands behind their product and does a money back guarantee. Like I really vet these things that I believe in and I promote, and I love that I get a discount for you guys. If you ever have any issues with anything at all that I have talked about or any of my guests have talked about on my show, I want you to reach out to me. I want to hear from you. And also, when you have a success, when you have great transformations, when you have improvements in your health because of what you've learned on my podcast, please reach out to me. You can just email me, support@learntruehealth.com. I would love to hear from you. There's been, as you know, 570 episodes. I've been doing this for almost 11 years. And I can remember about maybe 2 times where listeners said, hey, I had a problem with such and such a company that you talked about. And I what's cool is I go straight to the owner of the company because I interviewed them and I say, hey, my listener had a problem. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Let me immediately rectify the situation for you. And it's great that so rarely do people have problems with anything that I recommend because, again, I vet these companies and believe in them and get to know the creators of them. And these are amazing people that run these companies that really want to help you, that really want to help people to gain their health back and to heal. And I just love it. So many things that I've talked about on the show have really made a difference in my life and in my family's life and my friends' lives. And so I love passing it on. Of course, my clients' lives. I've had so many clients, dozens of clients have incredible success. It's over 300 clients. I have just thinking about the over 300 clients that have used the phototherapy patches that I use in my health coaching practice and have had outstanding results, just remarkable, like people getting so healthy, their doctor takes them off of medications that the doctor said they'd had to be on the rest of their lives, that kind of really amazing health transformations. So when I say today's episode is worth a listen because these kits that Brad has built can change your life, can take your health to the next level, whether you're bedridden or you're an elite athlete. This is something that will take your health, take it up several notches and upgrade your health. And that's why I'm so excited to bring you this information today. So go to learntruehealth.com/oxygen. Check out the show notes of today's podcast at learntruehealth.com or wherever you're listening from. And the details also will be in there as well. But it's easy. Just go to learntruehealth.com/oxygen. And of course, email me anytime. I'd love to hear from you. Support@learntruehealth.com. Have yourself a fantastic rest of your day. Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 570. I'm so excited for today's guest. We have with us Brad Pitzele, who has an amazing story of healing and really cool stuff that I've actually been super interested in for a while, using specific therapies to help the body reverse disease. I just want to jump right into your story because I find it so inspiring. and also gives people so much hope, because I know people who are suffering from even just one of the conditions you recovered from, right? You've recovered from multiple conditions, and it brings so much hope to people that they can reverse these conditions naturally, supporting the body's ability to heal itself. So welcome to the show, Brad.
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm not a doctor. I have an engineering degree, and I have an MBA, but definitely not a doctor. I gained my expertise through, what do they say, necessity is the mother of invention. After the medical system kind of failed me, to be quite honest. To your point, and by the way, I think the thing you said that's most important to me is hope. I know it. My darkest places, I kind of lost sight of that, and I found in my healing journey, it was so important to cling on to that and really learn to believe that you can get better. So if there's folks listening and they're struggling, I think that is such an important lesson.
Absolutely. Okay, so you're an engineer, and then you started to develop these issues. Take us back.
Well, when I started getting autoimmune conditions when I was like in second grade. I developed psoriasis, and then I had all sorts of weird other sort of symptoms that came and went. They would be like, let's say, life impacting for the month, and then they would kind of go away. And, I'd go to the doctor and they'd give it a label and there was no treatment, and it would kind of just go away. And I went about my life and I was mostly fine until, around 2010 or 11, I started to develop arthritis in my hands, and my fingers became really swollen, and I went to a rheumatologist. And I was doing a lot of physical labor at the time, so I wasn't sure if it was just like overuse. But I went to a rheumatologist, and he diagnosed me as an autoimmune condition called psoriatic arthritis, which is kind of like rheumatoid arthritis, but it's the kind you get when you have psoriasis. I was kind of shocked because my psoriasis was always incredibly mild. It wasn't like patchy all over my body. So when I had heard about that, I'm like, well, I'm sure I won't get that because I barely have psoriasis. So that was kind of a shock to the system. And he started putting me on all sorts of drugs. Some of them didn't do anything. Some of them helped for a while. But then when they wore off, I was in a worse place. And I was kind of on this treadmill where I'd do a drug, it would help, it'd wear off, and I was in a worse place. I'd try another drug. I'd never get quite as good as I did on that first one, but I did get some relief, and then I'd be worse yet. And probably after about the fourth round of that, I developed melanoma and skin cancer. And one of the contraindications of the medication was a higher risk of cancer, particularly melanoma. So I went back to my rheumatologist and said, what do we do, doc? Do I stop taking the drugs and I die in crippling pain? Or do I keep taking the drugs and risk cancer? And I feel like there's not a good answer here. And his answer was something to the effect like, no, we'll just try a different drug in the same class and hope for the best. Mm-hmm. And and that just echoed in my head. I got out of that appointment and I sat in my car and I just sat there in the parking lot with the air conditioning blasting me. It was, turned the radio off and just thought about it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm having this flash forward to me being on my deathbed of cancer and saying, why did I listen to the doctor? That's just how I felt. And so I just kind of told myself, I said, I don't really get this, but there's got to be a third way because neither of these seem particularly great. And at the time I had a young family, and that was even scarier. The thought of, my family losing me and everything I provide for was it was a little bit much for me. And so then I kind of started out on my alternate health, educational journey, I guess. I was on PubMed. I was going in other groups of folks who had chronic illness. I was trying to figure out what it was. I was seeing naturopathic doctors and functional medicine doctors and a variety of other specialists. Nothing really worked. Eventually, I did get diagnosed with Lyme disease and a co-infection called Bartonella. And that was really kind of the apex. I was in real bad shape.
What are some symptoms? Like you're saying you're in bad shape. Can you describe it?
Yeah. Well, the arthritis was pretty bad. It was mostly in my hands and my feet. My toes swelled up. They call it like sausage digit, where your
Oy.
toes are so swollen they look like sausages. I had no grip strength. And then it started to spread out, and I had weird things. Like I would wake up in the morning and the backs of my legs felt so stiff. It felt like I'd run an ultra marathon, and I'd get in the shower and I'd put it as just a click below scalding, as hot as I could handle. And then I'd try to go down and reach my toes and like stretch out my muscles, thinking it would help. I don't think it really did, but it was like the only thing I could think to do. And then I developed this, the worst pain was I developed this like neuropathic pain in the bottoms of my feet. And the only way I know to describe it to someone who's never experienced is it felt like someone had beaten the bottoms of my feet with a meat hammer. Like every step was excruciating. It felt like I was, just walking on bruised, beat up tissue. And even when I like got out of bed in the morning to go, or in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, I had to put on shoes before I stepped out of bed because I couldn't walk barefoot even to the toilet. And I brought those to the rheumatologist, and I was like, "Hey, these must be related to the psoriatic arthritis, right?" And he just kind of shook his head and was like, "No, those aren't arthritis." And he kind of looked at me like I was foolish. And I was like, something just doesn't feel right. Like all these symptoms are coming on together. They're all pain related. I have, arthritis in my feet. Now I have pain in my feet. And you're saying those are totally different things. And he didn't really give me an alternative. He didn't say, well, go see this sort of doctor, go get this sort of test. He was just like, no, that's not in my lane. Sorry. And then I started to develop really bad brain fog. I developed crippling fatigue. I mean, you just barely getting out of bed, like faking it at work. I'd hide in my office so, people wouldn't like notice me. I was walking incredibly slow. I'd gone from being a fast walker to an incredibly slow walker. I didn't have energy to make it through the day. And when I was in meetings, I couldn't follow what people were saying. My brain fog was so bad. And then I just had all these like weird pains and symptoms, and they would pop in and pop out, and some would stick around a while and others would go away. And when they went away, you didn't know if they were coming back in a week or a month or 3 months, or they were gone for good. It was just kind of, it was kind of difficult.
Like you couldn't say, oh, because I ate a pizza last night, then every time I eat a pizza, I feel bad like this. I feel these certain symptoms the next day. Like you couldn't identify changes that you made. Like if you chose something like I stayed up late and so the next day I feel wrecked, or I drank some beer and so these symptoms came back. Like there was just no rhyme or reason.
No, as a matter of fact, early on in my journey, the first things I did was I cleaned up my diet. I completely quit alcohol in 2014.
Good job.
Actually in 2013. 2014, I completely quit alcohol, and I went into an paleo autoimmune protocol diet, which is an incredibly restrictive diet. I didn't notice any benefits from those necessarily. As I got older, I didn't like drinking because I felt like even I wouldn't get a buzz, I'd have a beer or two and I'd feel almost hungover the next day. So I was like, fine not doing it. But I didn't have the energy to overexert myself, to be honest. Like there were times I had to overexert myself. There was like social pressure to be somewhere for work or another thing. And I probably paid the price for that. But a lot of the things just came and went and nothing seemed to work. I actually made a list, Ashley, of things I tried in my healing journey. I recently made it. It's a decade old, and it's just from my memory. And there were like 200 different things I came up with in the first 10 minutes. It was... So I'm sure there were many, many more that I'm just not even remembering.
And, just because something didn't work for you doesn't mean it doesn't work for someone else. Like I know of people who, because you didn't just have autoimmune, there was other things going on. But I know of people who have been able to put their autoimmune in remission through diet alone, with a more healing diet. But it's really good to keep track of what you're doing and what you've done and your symptoms. Because you see it's kind of like Edison and the light bulb, right? There's like 999 failures were informing his journey towards the best light bulb. And for you, keeping track of and looking at, well, these are the things I've tried and these are the results I did or didn't get. And you kept looking, you kept diving deeper, you kept looking at the research, the mindset. This is something that like is so important to drive home, is that you had a mindset that you were going to find something to heal yourself, that you weren't giving up and you believed you could. Some people don't even try because they just listen to their doctor. If you had just taken it at face value and listened to your doctor and been like, okay, I'll just try a different drug and there's nothing out there for me because my doctor said there's nothing out there for me. But you did not give in to that mindset. You see, the mindset is what drives our actions, and our actions in life are what drive our results. You can't get results in life if you don't first have the mindset. So you had the mindset that there is an answer out there and you won't stop until you find it. And that is what every single person with health issues that they don't want to have anymore need to adapt. They need to rebel against the mainstream that has told them they have their problem because of genetics or because of their age or because of their sex or because of whatever, right? Because this is just how it is. Just listen to me and take this drug. Whatever your doctor's told you, you have to rage against that and be, the black sheep, be the salmon, go up against it. And I'm not saying completely throw out all medicine, but don't let any doctor limit you. Don't let any philosophy or even a parent, like, maybe a well-intentioned best friend, don't let them limit you. Your mindset needs to be that your body can heal itself and you're going to continue on a path until you find what helps your body heal itself. And so that mindset gets you results in life. So you kept digging. You did over 200 things. You kept digging. What happened next? Because you were clearly suffering. It was like, can hardly get out of bed. And I remember that I had 18 years ago, I had such bad chronic adrenal fatigue. I couldn't process human language in the morning. My brain didn't even work for the first few hours. Like, people would be talking at me and it'd be like, Charlie Brown, the parents, womp, womp,
Totally.
womp. And I'm like, hold on, I got to get 4 more shots of caffeine in me, in 2 more hours until I can fully comprehend what you're saying. Like, I couldn't process language. That's how completely exhausted I was. And my adrenal fatigue was that bad. So I remember just dragging ass, just completely dragging and just crying myself to sleep in my pillow at night, like begging God for the answers to be revealed to me. Yeah. And so I know that level of despair. So there you were in that level of despair. How did you get to the answers?
I'd say I got lucky. You actually just flagged a memory in my head. I just remember, so many of those things sound so familiar to me, quite honestly. But being in the meetings and just like in middle afternoon in the want, and I like, right, Brad? And I'm like, yeah. Oh, sorry, I was taking notes. I wasn't taking notes. I didn't understand a thing you just said, and I was trying. Or I would abuse, before I gave up coffee, I was abusing coffee, and there was like this small little window of like a couple millimeters where I had enough caffeine I could get above the clouds before I became a total jittery mess. And I lived for that. I lived for it because I'm like, I can get in that window. If I can be there for like 30 minutes, I can get through my inbox, and people will think I'm cogent. For me, it got worse. I spent several years getting worse and worse. I was diagnosed with Lyme. I was seeing this functional medical doctor, and he's like, he wanted to test me for Lyme. I didn't even believe I had it. I was like, that's ridiculous. I'd never had that bullseye rash thing. I'd never been bitten by a tick. But I'll pay the outrageous sum for this test just so I can kind of quiet him down. We can focus on the real issue. And then it came back positive, and I went into his office and I'm like, look, doc, what's the chances this is a false positive? And he's like, well, you had the bacteria's DNA in your urine. What do you think? And I'm like, oh, that's when it finally hit me. I was like, okay, I guess I got to accept this. And he tried everything. And at one point I remember him telling me, and you said it right, everyone's journey is unique. And that's kind of what our brand name 1000 Roads is about, is, having respect for the fact that, everyone's journey is unique. And for me, he's like, hey, my big gun is ozone. When nothing else works, we do these ozone injections.
Yes.
And he's like, this will get you. And he's like, you need to do 3 of them. And I remember I did all 3 of them and I felt nothing, Ashley. I mean, I didn't feel any better. I didn't feel worse, like it had caused a Herxenheimer reaction or like there was no difference. And at that point that was kind of a really low point because, this doctor, he's like, oh, I got the nuclear option. Here you go. And then it was like crickets. And I was like, oh gosh, that's when I started to doubt. I'm like, maybe I never will heal. Maybe this is what this is. Maybe today is actually the best it ever gets. And I started to have kind of, some pretty dark thoughts, I'd say. And I think he saw it too. And he kind of threw me a Hail Mary and he's like, hey, you need to look into mitochondrial health, because he knew I did a bunch of research. And he said, you need to look into mitochondrial health. And he gave me a couple ideas. And there's things that I hadn't heard of at the time, like exercise with oxygen therapy, red light therapy, and even mentioned hyperbaric therapy, which I had heard of. And I went home and researched them. And I didn't have any faith in any of them to do anything. It didn't make any sense to me, to be quite honest. I'm like, I breathe every day. Why would oxygen be the thing? I've done all sorts of diets. I've done all sorts of supplements and herbs and different modalities. Why would oxygen do it? And same thing with light. Light sounds ridiculous. I'm like, I go out in the sun and I get light, and that doesn't I don't feel any better when I'm out in the sun. So what are you talking about, sort of thing? But that was kind of a turning point for me, actually. I looked at the hyperbaric first because I'd heard of it. And the treatment he wanted me to do was, I believe it was 8 weeks straight, 7 days a week, 90 minutes inside of a hard shell hyperbaric chamber in a doctor's office. He gave me a couple of folks who could do it. If I was going to stay local, it was going to cost me $75,000. If I flew out to Florida, I could get it for $50,000. But of course, I'd have to fly out there and live there for 2 months. And I'd probably lose my job for doing that. And, rent a car and, figure out how to make meals because I was on this restrictive diet out there and all these other things. So that wasn't practical.
But for that money, couldn't you buy your own? Couldn't you buy your own hyperbaric chamber?
Well, there's two different flavors of hyperbaric. There's mild hyperbaric, which you can do in your house. And those go up to usually like 1.3 or now even 1.5 ATA, which one is the atmospheric pressure you feel at sea level. So 1.5 means 50% more pressure than you normally feel. The ones in the doctor's office, the hard shell ones, go up to like 2.3, so 130% more pressure. And he said, you really need to do this because the mild ones, you'll have to do it for at least 12, maybe 18 months to see the benefits. And, who knows if I could stick around for doing something for an hour and a half a day for a year. That didn't seem realistic.
Oh, yeah.
So I kind of thought about how I would feel at the end of that. I'm like, how will I, like, all these things failed me. Why would I, I'm going to spend $50,000 or 75, and how am I going to feel at the end if I don't feel any different? Like, and I just wasted all of my family's money on this thing. Remortgage the house for it, sort of thing. And so then I looked at exercise with oxygen therapy, which I'd never heard of. And the only place I found any information was through manufacturers. And it was all filled with like hyperbole. They were all mega turbo sort of language on their websites. There was no one talking about it on any kind of any group of sick folks or people dealing with chronic health challenges. And so I didn't have a lot of confidence in it. And they were charging like $5,000 and $25,000 at the time. And so I just kind of walked away and said, I don't know about this. And then I thought, about, well, if I say no to both of these, what do I have left? I didn't have anything left on the list. I'd tried just about everything I'd found at that point. And then I kind of just decided, I'm like, well, I could do the exercise with oxygen therapy because it was like a 15-minute session, but I just don't want to pay, $10,000 for one. What if I kind of made my own? As I mentioned, I joke I'm a recovering engineer because I left the engineering field at that point. And so I just kind of set about to educate myself and make one.
So to go back to the ozone, you said 3 shots. Was it the 10 pass, or was it just like?
It was MAH, so it wasn't the 10 pass. I don't think they were doing 10 pass back then quite yet.
Okay, because there's a big difference between the two. Like the 10 pass, which is like a 3-hour long process.
Yeah.
Really getting the ozone in your blood. Okay, so I'm imagining like I'd go to like the sporting goods store and get like a used treadmill, and then buy an oxygen tank And like, this is what I'm imagining, and like putting an oxygen mask on, or maybe like snorkel gear, like, or not, like scuba gear,
Yep.
like getting a scuba mask with oxygen and walking on a treadmill at home. So like, paint the picture of what this looks like, exercise oxygen machine that you created.
Yeah. So, there's two ways people can get medical grade oxygen, which is what you want to use. One is through a tank. The challenge with the tank is you could probably suck in nearly an entire tank, maybe in one session, because you can take in a massive amount of oxygen when you're exercising because you're breathing heavier, etc. And so it's not really practical. You can imagine driving out every day with a big old tank in your trunk trying to get it filled. And there's risks with compressed oxygen. The other mechanism is there's a device called an oxygen concentrator. And what it does is it takes the oxygen in the room, which is typically about 21%, and it purifies it up to medical grade, which is 93% oxygen. And so it can produce like an endless supply of oxygen. The only challenge with the machines is they can only produce 5 or 10 liters of oxygen in a minute, which is great if you're sitting on your butt. But if you're exercising, you can easily use 50 or 60 liters in a minute. So they can't keep up with you. So if you tried to use them, you'd be also, breathing in 10 liters of oxygen and 40 liters of air and diluting it. So what you do is you fill a large reservoir. You can kind of think of it like a large balloon. It looks like an oversized pillow. It can hold like 1,000 liters. So if you think of a 2-liter bottle of soda, imagine 500 of those. So it's like 5 or 6 feet wide, 5 or 6 feet tall. And you fill the whole thing with 1,000 liters of oxygen with this device. And then you hook up a hose with a mask. You put the mask on and you do 15 minutes of exercise. So yeah, for me, it was something I could do in my own home, and I could do it in 15 minutes. And so like, that was really attractive. The exercise thing, I didn't really know about at first. Like, wasn't sure how well I could do that or if I could do that. I was pretty shocked, actually. When you put the mask on and do exercise with oxygen, you find that the exercise is much easier. So I was able to do more than I thought I would at the get-go. But I'll tell you, like, my feet were in such bad shape. I look back, I forgot about this. You forget so many things when you get better. But I found this old picture. I was using an elliptical machine, and my feet hurt so bad that I took those like 1.5 inch thick garden mats you use when you're kneeling in the garden, and I put one on each pedal. That's the only way I could do it. And so, yeah, I just started out slow, and I guess my endurance built up relatively quickly too. But that was the first thing I noticed was it was easier to exercise, and my endurance increased really quickly. But I didn't notice any benefits at first, and I was kind of like, it's another failed experiment. Just like everything else, I'm glad I didn't pay $10,000 for this thing. And I probably just kept doing it out of like, I didn't have a lot of other ideas at the time. And it was just like, I just kept doing it, even though I didn't think it was working. And probably about month 3, I noticed, I started to notice symptoms going away and not coming back. And it was exactly what you said, which is I was symptom journaling, which I think is such an important thing, particularly when you're dealing with a lot of things. And it gets so arduous sometimes, and you just don't want to do it. Or you just kind of get sloppy about it because hey, nothing's changing. Yeah, more of the same. But even the times I was a little sloppy with it, I found it was very helpful for me because at the very beginning, when things started to go away, I didn't notice it. And then I noticed 1 or 2 things. I said, wait, I'm going to go back and look at that. And I noticed actually there were 4 or 5 things that were kind of looked like they were going away. And I had my eye out for it over the next couple of weeks and months. And that really gave me permission to have hope, I guess, and really, persist, which I think was a real turning point for me.
In my book, Addicted to Wellness, I share the symptom inventory checklist that I give to all my clients. And it's in more detail in my book, but I'll just explain it. If you don't want to get my book, which is fine, it's on Amazon, or you can go to learnchild.com/addicted to wellness. Just get a pad of paper, and there's 3 columns. It's intensity, duration, and frequency. And so then actually it's 4 columns because you're going to write down on the most left-hand side column all the symptoms. And take your time to empty out, because how the brain works is it can think about maybe 6 to 10 chunks of information at a time, and then you kind of empty out, and then more kind of come to mind. So like take time to fill it out, and think about like your morning symptoms, your afternoon symptoms, your evening symptoms, like what have symptoms at nighttime, like just different prompts to draw that out, like digestive symptoms, muscular symptoms, skin symptoms. Like, so you have to kind of go through and prompt yourself. And also sometimes we forget about symptoms because we've been told that, oh, that's just because you're old. Like, oh, well, I forgot I have, heartburn because my mom had heartburn and my whole family has heartburn. So therefore it's normal. I'm like, no. A symptom is something you don't want. It's something that isn't health to you, right? So write everything down.
Absolutely.
And then you grade it based on like frequency. How often does it happen? Intensity. How on a scale of 1 to 10, this is your own scale, your own judgment. But and then duration. How long does it last when you do have it? So I get it. Like, for example, headache 3 times a week lasts for 3 hours, 6 out of 10 pain, as an example, right? And then once a month, you can go back to this and don't look at the sheet. Start a new sheet, and you can also do this in a spreadsheet. Start a new sheet, new tab. Don't look at last month. And for someone who's like has major issues, they could do it once a week. Because if they're like, I don't think I should do this therapy anymore, I don't know what's working. Okay, well, so do your symptom inventory checklist. It's been 7 days since you've been on this herb or exercise with oxygen or whatever you're doing. Write everything you can think of down, and then go back and compare it. And it's good to do it once a month because it at least gives you some time for the body to heal, right? You said a 3-month mark. Interesting about 3 months, 90 days. So many of our cells have turned over in 90 days. Think about blood. We have a whole new red blood cells. Every 90 days, we've got, they're turning over. So when someone has A1C, they're on like a really great program for reversing diabetes, and increasing their insulin sensitivity. Getting the A1C checked every 3 to 4 months helps them see that they're trending in the right direction, right? Because every 90 days, the body's got new red blood cells, and many other cells are turning over. So that checklist is so important. I've had 2 clients in the last 10 years, 2 clients who have forgotten they came to me with migraines because we changed their diet. We cleaned up so many things in their life. So many of their symptoms went away, but they came to debilitating migraines. And then like 3 to 6 months later, because they hadn't had them in several months, I was like going through their notes, and I'm like, oh, so when was the last time you had a migraine? They're like, what are you talking about? I don't have migraines. And I'm like, look at your intake form. Like, and don't you remember? They're like, oh yeah, I forgot. I haven't had them in so long. I'm like, and the thing is, like, for example, I'll have them change their diet, and then they'll be like, they'll forget how bad they felt, and then they'll go back to eating poorly, right? Yeah. And then they'll recreate their symptoms. But if we don't take these notes and we don't keep track, we really do forget what's helping and what's not.
My thing was, I always told folks, I'm like, at the beginning, I didn't notice differences because when you have 46 or 52 different symptoms and 4 of them blink away, you're not focused on that. You're focused on the 40 more that are still bugging you. And you're right. You just totally block. You have to, at some point when you're sick, you have to block some of it out because it's the only way to operate is just like ignore it and override. Because if you didn't, you wouldn't even be the minimal amount of functional that you are. But sometimes that becomes like, it helps you function in the short term, but it doesn't help you when you're trying to heal. So I totally agree. And the other thing I did with I did a very similar format to yours. The other thing I would do is I would like make comments next to something like, did this get caused because I put this spice in did this happen because I would ask the question because I knew 4 days later when I was having it or not having it, I wouldn't remember that kind of question. And
yeah. If you're doing a daily journal, so there's another type of tracking that I teach where I'm like, it's like you write, it's like food, it's called a food mood journal, but I'm like, you don't need to do these long paragraphs. When you hear journal, you're like, people are adverse to like, I don't want to sit there and write paragraphs. It's bullet point. So you write down, like, for example, and this is also in my book, Addicted to Wellness, but like you're like, how was your sleep? Just quick, like bullet point, like good, deep, or like, shallow, woke up frequently, tossed and turned, like just write down what happened. And then, how was your sleep? What did you eat? You don't have to write down like how much you ate, just like everything that you put in your body, like liquid and food, everything you put in your body, and how you felt. So ate this, felt pretty crappy, low energy, right? You just write these bullet points. And then what symptoms you had that day. So like worse brain fog in the afternoon, right? Like whatever it was, you write down these symptoms. And then after about a week, I like to tell people to take highlighters and go, okay, pick, for example, brain fog is yellow, right? Every time you mention brain fog, put a yellow. Every time you mention like headache, put pink. Every time you mention like worse pain, So then you go back and look and you start to see, okay, yellow appears every day I eat eggs, or every day, I had these heart palpitations that came on when I ate eggs, and I figured it out and I stopped eating eggs. I actually discovered why. It was really interesting. Had to do with microbiome stuff, but that's how I tracked it. Is like, because I couldn't figure out what was causing these heart palpitations. And when I tracked this and removed eggs and they went away, I added eggs, they came back, removed eggs, they went away. I could turn heart palpitations on and off, whether I ate eggs or not. And when we're eating, 50 things a day, how do we know which one, right? So it's, so there's like that daily tracking, but then you can also do that big picture monthly tracking when you start to see it trending in the right direction. But I love that you're bringing that up, because it's so important, because we really do forget how we're feeling. So for some reason you kept doing the oxygen, exercise with oxygen, you kept doing it. I mean, also it must have just felt good to get your lymph moving, to be able to like walk freer, like walk with like less fatigue. Like that must have also just felt good.
At first, I won't tell you it did. I won't lie to you. I would like everything hurt. Getting on there hurt. I kind of felt like I was beating myself up more, because the bottoms of my feet hurt and the backs of my legs hurt, and I didn't have the energy. And what people don't know about oxygen, one of the powerful things is it's a very powerful anti-inflammatory. And the way I kind of describe it, the way I wrap my head around it, is when I started doing it, it was like all the inflammation in my body was like water in a bathtub. And I started doing it, and it was like you pull the plug on the bathtub. If you look down 30 seconds later, do you notice any difference in the water line? You don't, right? It's like still full. It's still full. And you have to kind of go away from it and come back to notice a difference in the water line. And I feel like that was the 3-month mark where I could no longer like ignore the fact like the water line had lowered. But before that, again, I was also kind of skeptical, I think, Ashley. Like, I didn't want to give myself permission to have hope, because things blinked in and blinked out all the time. And losing hope felt expensive, if I'm honest. Every time, like I mentioned, the doctor in the ozone, when the big gun didn't work, I was, it was like that hurt. Or when I found this group where people were talking about the same symptoms as me, and I thought like, oh, I'm going to change my diet. I hear all these people going in remission. This is okay. I'll do it, and you're like, you're super excited, and you're like, it's going to take me 3 weeks to eliminate all this stuff from my diet, but I'm going to do it because heck with it. If I feel great. And then you get there and you're like, I don't feel any different. Like each time that happened, you kind of close off a little bit. So I think that probably delayed it. Actually, a lot of our clients who do it, I think I'm probably on the long end of folks who tell me how, like, some folks get off, to your point, the first time, like, this is amazing. Some it takes 3 sessions, some it takes a month, but I rarely hear anyone who's had to take 3 months. And I think part of that was, like you said, it was that kind of mental headspace and willingness to have hope at that point. Because I mean, I had been sick for that over a half decade of real sickness, not all the little stuff I had before then. And it was like, and I was really aggressive about trying things. So, you kind of get to that point, I suppose.
I want to dig into the science of why exercise with oxygen is so therapeutic. So, people think, well, like you said, I'm breathing oxygen for free. Like, why would increased, or even like, oh, I've been on oxygen before, like in a hospital, like I didn't feel like $1,000,000, like, but it's the specific, it's so exercise, I'm imagining, is driving the oxygen into the system, right? It's so,
Yes.
but I'd love to hear the science behind it. And then you said it was anti-inflammatory, but I'd love for you to explain on a deeper level what's happening short term and long term using this therapy.
Yeah. So I was a skeptic, and I started reading articles on PubMed, not just what people were posting on groups. And I was kind of shocked, like there wasn't more information about oxygen and people weren't using it more as I started to look into it. So first, mechanistically, how does the thing work? Well, I'll compare it to hyperbaric oxygen because that's the more well-known cousin. When you get in a hyperbaric chamber, they apply that pressure. We were talking about either 30% more or 130% more pressure, let's say. And that pressure forces more gas exchange through your lungs and into your blood. And at the same time, they have you breathing elevated oxygen, normally 93 or 100% oxygen. So it's forcing more of the gas, and it's more pure oxygen versus just 21% you breathe at sea level. And so you get more oxygen into your blood. Now, when you look at hyperbaric, once it gets into your bloodstream, the pressure isn't doing anything. And what I mean by that is, if you got into a hard shell hyperbaric chamber that was 2.3 ATA, 130% more pressure than you feel at sea level, your blood pressure does not go up 130%, thank God. That pressure is not being felt by your blood, it's being held back by your lung membrane. And so the only work it's really doing is driving more gas into your circulatory system, and it's pushing it in there. Now, EWOT, we kind of flip that around. Instead of using pressure to push more oxygen through our lungs, to your point, we are using exercise to pull more through. So when you start exercising, your body immediately recognizes it's going to go into an oxygen deficit because oxygen's the gating factor for how much energy your cells can produce. And that's why you might hear terms like VO2 max thrown around. So if you're talking to elite athletes or longevity folks, they really love to focus on this metric called VO2 max, which is literally stands for the volume of oxygen, the maximum volume of oxygen you can utilize. So the more oxygen you can utilize, the more energy your body can produce, the higher you'll be able to perform at, let's say, an endurance task. It's also linked to greater longevity, et cetera. So oxygen is really important for energy production. You start exercising, your body says, oh, I'm in an oxygen deficit. We can't keep up this activity. We need more energy. So it forces you to start breathing faster and deeper. We all know that and have experienced that. Your heart starts beating faster and deeper as well. Your blood vessels dilate. All of this is an adaptation to allow more oxygen into the system and to get it circulating more quickly so your body can produce more energy. So when we do exercise with oxygen therapy, we're effectively just hijacking all of these physiological changes that happen in exercise and breathing near pure oxygen to drive more oxygen into the system. Now, the interesting reason on why it works, there was this German inventor and physicist in the 1950s and 60s who started doing research on what became EWOT. He had looked at some early research by a Nobel Prize winning German named Otto Warburg, who found that he could turn any cell into a cancerous cell by depriving it of oxygen. And so this guy in the 1960s, Manfred von Arden, wanted to research that, and he started looking around and trying exercise with oxygen and several other oxygen protocols. And what he found was something I found profound in the research, which is whether you're chronically ill or even in aging, what happens in our circulatory system is at the very end runs of our circulatory system, our capillaries are thinner than a human hair. They're actually thinner than a red blood cell. So in order for a red blood cell to actually get through your capillary and deliver oxygen to your cells, the only way for it to do it is it has to fold itself like a taco to get to squeeze in single file through these tiny, tiny pipes, if you will. And he found with aging and with illness, we have increased inflammation, and it swells the linings of these capillaries, and now the red blood cells can't get through. So everything downstream of that clog is effectively not getting oxygen. And so what happens in the cells is when they stop getting oxygen, since oxygen is so important to energy production, they have to go into backup generator mode. They've got a second way of producing energy, which is called glycolysis or fermentation or anaerobic respiration. It's all the same thing. It basically means producing energy without oxygen. But when your cells do that, they can only produce about 5% of the oxygen they can with oxygen. That's how important oxygen is to energy production.
5% energy? Is that what you meant to say?
Yes, 5% energy. So when you have, so let's say you take a molecule of glucose and you give it to the cell to produce energy. If it does not have oxygen, it can produce like 2 molecules of ATP, which is the energy molecule that all of our body runs on. It's the energy currency, if you will. When it has oxygen with that same molecule of glucose, it can produce 36 to 38 units of energy. So when you lose that oxygen, your cells can only produce about 5% as much energy. And so now they're in this kind of brownout phase where they don't have enough energy to do their critical functions, and they can't detoxify, and that becomes worse because when they use these backup generators, it's kind of a dirty fuel. It creates a lot of metabolic waste like lactic acid and other byproducts. And because they're in low energy, they don't take the trash out. They just let all the metabolic waste and oxidative stress build up inside the cell, causing further damage. So Manfred von Arden discovered this is happening in our cells as we age because of this swelling in our capillaries. And he found that by doing exercise with oxygen, he was able to create this powerful anti-inflammatory effect inside the endothelial cells that line the capillaries and reestablish more youthful blood flow. And that was actually the birth of EWOT, was basically oxygen is anti-inflammatory. It reopens up our capillaries, which allows our cells to become re-energized. And that's a lot, right? But in essence, everything you do requires energy. Detoxification requires energy. Thinking requires energy. Moving a muscle, your organs functioning, repair and regeneration, it all takes energy. And so when you have inflammation building up in your system, and pretty much everyone who's got chronic illness does, one of the first places that gets impacted is our microcirculation, these capillaries. And then that causes all this damage downstream. And when I was sick, there weren't too many folks talking about mitochondrial health like my doctor recommended. But you hear a lot about it today. People are talking about mitochondrial health and what we can do for it. The true cause of a lot of mitochondrial health is not defective mitochondria. It's actually poor oxygen delivery causing all of this metabolic waste to damage the mitochondria. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of an upstream problem. And that was an aha moment for me when I realized, holy cow, and I started reading about my particular chronic illnesses, and there was a direct linkage to this endothelial swelling in the capillaries. And I was like, I have to, this makes a whole lot of sense scientifically. And so that's probably why I got excited about it early. So the very first thing it does is it causes an anti-inflammatory impact. And there's some really interesting, like this isn't fringe research. You can go out in PubMed and find this. Now, here's the interesting thing. Anywhere in your body, you have inflammation, you have oxygen starvation. The medical term for that is hypoxia. So anywhere you have inflammation, you have hypoxia. And the opposite is true. If you starve any tissue of oxygen, you cause hypoxia to it, you will also cause inflammation. They have to coexist. And so that's why oxygen is such a powerful anti-inflammatory, because lack of oxygen is required for inflammation. So when you reestablish oxygenation, inflammation has to go away.
So what you've described is in the short term of beginning to do exercise with oxygen. What happens after a few months? Like what do you see physiologically that changes over time by doing this consistently? And is it like just one 15-minute session a day or 2 sessions? What is required to see these changes in the long term?
Yeah, so oxygen does a lot of things. We talked about anti-inflammatory. We talked about how critical it is for energy and how energy is so needed for healing. It's, if you've got brain fog, guess what that is? That's inflammation in your brain. Your brain is the most hungry part of your body as far as oxygen goes. It's only about 2% of your weight, but it uses about 20% of your oxygen. So if you're like feeling low energy or you're feeling brain foggy, that's literally your body telling you to conserve energy it doesn't have because it doesn't have the oxygen it needs to produce energy. So in the immediate term, what happens, actually some of the first things that happen is detoxification. EWOT's an incredible detoxifier, and it works through a variety of modalities. You'd mentioned moving your lymphatic system, which requires muscle movement, obviously. We all know, or most of us probably know, sweating is a very good detoxifier. That's why people use saunas, etc., which you're going to do. The thing people don't know is that our lungs are our actual number one detox organ. About 70% of all toxins that leave our body exit through our lungs. And so increased breathing rate and increased oxygen help with that. And one way you can kind of think about this, if you think about, you walk up to your friend who drank too much the night before or had a bunch of garlic, you can smell it on their breath. That's literally the body detoxing. It's not still sitting in their gut. That's coming from their blood out into their breath. And it also, in order to detoxify and get toxins out of our body, they need to go through an oxidative reaction, meaning they combine with oxygen to break them into a simpler molecule that our elimination organs can use to get it out. So early on, detoxification, early on, people will notice energy benefits, better sleep, more energy. Often some folks will notice pretty quickly improvements in inflammation and pain. But then over time, what happens is you shut off those inflammatory signals, you turn down all of the oxidative stress going on in your body, you strengthen the immune system. So if you're fighting like a stealth pathogen like I was, it makes the body more competent at that, or if you're fighting cancer or anything like that. And it also helps build new mitochondria. It's called mitogenesis. So our mitochondria when you have fresh mitochondria, they're able to produce energy more efficiently. And so that can be, all the excess energy is what's directed towards repair and recovery. So that's really important. And so it kind of works holistically in a way that it helps with detoxification. It can help with immune system strength. It helps knock down inflammation. And oxygen is incredibly anti-cancerous. We talked about Otto Warburg, but there's a deep amount of research on the linkage between oxygen and cancer and hypoxia and cancer. And we can go into that if we want to. So people will notice that. Now, as far as the protocol, it's really simple. It's literally what it sounds like. It's do 15 minutes of exercise while breathing oxygen. I normally recommend most folks work up to about 3 to 5 times a week. Not everyone starts there, especially people with chronic illness. Now, it also, as far as like exercise intensity, this isn't like, high intensity interval training. We don't need that. That would just make you weaker, particularly early. Folks often start really gently. We have some folks who do slow walking on a treadmill, bouncing on a rebounder, standing on a vibration plate, one of those $49 under the desk pedal bikes to get started. And we even have folks who are too sick to exercise at first, and they'll start by breathing the oxygen while they get in like an infrared sauna blanket, because that will increase your heart rate a little bit. And that's the goal, is to increase the heart rate a little bit while we're breathing the oxygen. And for really sick folks, because it's such a strong detoxifier, we have them start really slow so they don't create a detox reaction. And build up over time. But eventually the goal is to get to about 3 to 5 times a week for 15 minutes.
Oh, you don't have to do it every day?
Nope. I don't even recommend you do it every day. You can. You can do it multiple times a day if you want. There's no risk, no real downside other than over-exercise. And so I always recommend folks take at least a day or 2 off a week just to let their muscles rest and recuperate.
Is there like a point of diminishing return? Like, have you studied that? Like, what's What's
Yeah.
the most, like, if someone's like, I just want to do it to get the best results, but I don't want to start having diminishing returns. So, like, is
For
every day
me,
too much?
I find that probably about the ideal is about 5 days a week. Um, that's really a great one. Now it depends per person. Like I always tell
Right.
folks, like if you're going to exercise 7 days a week, yeah, add the oxygen. You'll get incremental benefits from it. It's to your point, it's diminishing returns. And I'm always trying, like I've lived the chronic illness life where every morning and night you're counting pills and taking potions and you're doing a sauna and you're doing an Epsom salt bath and you're doing this and you're doing, and you find you spend 6 hours on what I used to call the ceremonies. And then at some point it becomes overwhelming and you just kind of throw up your hands. You're like, I might feel a little better, but I just wasted my entire day. And like, I've got a life, I've got a family, I've got a job, whatever it is. So I'm kind of mindful of that. And I think there's a sweet spot, really the benefits of, like for me, I noticed incremental benefits in EWAT over the first 3 years. And that's kind of shocking. If you just started a new exercise protocol today, you'd figure by the time you got to month 4, you'd probably kind of plateau, right? Like you're not going to get more unless you're putting more in. And that really wasn't my experience with it. It was like, I kept improving. Even after I like regained my health, I noticed my general wellness and like my endurance just kept improving. And it was kind of in unexpected ways, quite frankly. So my goal is always to get folks to do this consistently over time. It's always the folks who say, hey, I'm going to do it like 3 times a day and go hit it hard. And then they get to month 4 and they're like, you know what? I can't do it 3 times a day. So I'm just not going to do it, sort of thing. Always kind of guarding against that.
I looked it up, and with EWAT, there's different studies between 4 and 12-week studies. So like you're talking months, 4 weeks to 12 weeks. I mean, it's, not even a year, right? Just a matter of months. And for someone who's had chronic health issues, they'll easily want to invest 12 weeks into trying something. But between 4 and 12 weeks, the EWAT, which is, like you said, only doing it a few times a week for 15 minutes, can increase mitochondrial respiration capacity, ATP production, and overall mitochondrial mass by up to 35%. They said the low end was 15, the high end was 35. And that's like growing 35% more mitochondria and cellular energy in 4 to 12 weeks of doing something for 15 minutes a few times a week. I mean, that's
crazy,
amazing.
Right?
It's so cool. So I definitely want to go down that rabbit hole with you that you talked about oxygen-starved cells and their relation to cancer, most cancers. But I still want to just make sure that we fully cover this idea of, in the short term, let's say 4 to 12 weeks. I'm considering that still short term because you talked about results even 3 years in, right? So short term, we know that it's decreasing inflammation, that's increasing mitochondrial production. It's getting oxygen to the cells, and you explained the process of how one of the ways in which it can quickly help get oxygen to the cell because it's helping decrease that inflammation in the endothelial lining of the cardiovascular system. And by the way, endothelial lining is where heart disease happens. So if you're affecting in a positive way, if you're affecting a decreased in inflammation in the endothelial lining of the cardiovascular system, you are reversing heart disease. Which, I mean, what else like that? Just that alone is worth looking into it for me, right? Just that alone is like a selling point. But what happens over the course of, let's say, a year into it? So more of a long term. What do people see, and what do like can you see in labs like changes? Like, can we talk about like the real like hard evidence that people see in the long term of doing this? And again, the long term, you said it's like 3 to 5 times a week, 15 minutes. 15 minutes. And everyone has 15 minutes. You know what I mean? When I go to the gym, it's at least 30 minutes, and that's like a quickie. That's like a quick workout, right? But 15 minutes feels like nothing, right? I can't even finish a TV show in 15 minutes. So, like that's so easy to think about. And I love that you have these steps, these incremental steps. So it's like if someone they can't even imagine themselves exercising for 15 minutes. It's like, put on a heated put on a sauna blanket, whatever you can do to get your heart rate up. You can even just like stomp in like, or be, like you said, be on a rebounder and then try stomping on place, or like,
Yep.
walking in place, or doing chair exercises. There's like YouTube videos of like lifting your arms and stuff like that. But there's all kind of exercises. Someone like you find where they are, and you match where they're at physically, what they can do.
Yes.
But the oxygen is going to make it easier to do it, which is a good point. Okay, so talk about the physiological changes in the long term and what people map in labs, and also, of course, what they share as their results.
Yeah, one of the things I tried to do for the market is I felt like there was too much hyperbole. So we are the only company, I believe, certainly the first, that put reviews on site, because I want people to hear from other customers. So you can go on there and hear some of their stories, and there are some pretty cool ones on there. I'd like to tell you about my story. So this is really interesting. So a year later, I started doing EWOT, I started doing red light. We can talk about that and why they play together. But I walk back into the doctor's office, and I'm definitely better, but you kind of downplay it because I wasn't 100% yet, sort of thing. And like when you're in it, you're always focused on the next mountain to climb, not the ones you already scaled. And I walked in, and my doctor walked in, and he was just shocked. He just opened the door and he looked at me shocked, and he was like, he could tell I was better. And that kind of shocked me, like I knew I was better, but I didn't know I was that much better, that he would see it like that. And he's like, Brad, he had asked me what I was doing. We had this conversation. Then at the end, he's like, look, I just bought this $50,000 thing called a bioenergy tester, and I want to get you in my database. I'm going to have you go do it. Would you go do it for me? And I'm like, sure. So I come back, and it's basically this nurse sits me down. She measures all my vitals, my pulse rate, my breathing rate, my gas exchange, all sorts of different vitals. And then stationary, she says, okay, now here's what we're going to do. We're going to get you on this exercise bike. And it's an ergometer, which means they can control the resistance. And she's like, it's going to steadily increase resistance over time, and it's going to keep increasing until you get to a point we call failure, which I assume was probably some percentage of my max heart rate or something like that. And she's like, it'll take you 8 to 12 minutes, and then we'll read this out. So I did this. I get on there, and at 8 minutes, it was like nothing. At 12 minutes, it was nothing. 20 minutes, I was still going. I want to say around 23 or 24 minutes, I finally hit whatever they call failure, and she got me off. And she looks at me and she goes, who are you? Are you some sort of ultra endurance athlete? And I was like, I was kind of shocked when she said it. I kind of laughed. I'm like, no, I'm just someone trying to recover from a chronic illness. I'm like, I told her, I said, I just do cardio in my garage for like 15 minutes, 5 times a week. And she's like, I've never seen anyone do this. And these test results came back, and I was 40 at the time, and my VO2 max was a 50. And I looked it up. Being on a bike to get a 50 at age 40 for a man put me in the top 5% of everyone my age. And, looked at my biological age and my mitochondria and energy production and all these other functions of, various different functions in my body. And it was like shocking. Like 100 was the baseline, and I was doing 160 in this and 140 in that and 220 in this thing. I was 1 year out from like just wincing to get on that machine. And that was kind of my turnabout. And I still have those test results. I was sharing with someone the other day. I had to pull them out and dust them off. But it was that was like one of those like, holy cow moments. Like I knew it, but that was a whole different level of knowing it. So like for me, my endurance improved so much. And, it started with me being tired and barely being able to walk. And here I was top 5% in VO2 max without necessarily thinking I was working that much harder than I had. Although the resistance on my elliptical machine just kept going up. I was doing it at a 17 out of 20 level of resistance, which is kind of crazy. But I was still reading a magazine and not trying to crank it out. And even like I was weightlifting, and like I was shocked. Like I started putting on a bunch of muscle because it helps you recover quicker. And then I had one of those, this isn't a lab, but this is another one of those points where a few years after that, I just had this epiphany moment where I was running the company. I had a full-time job at the time. Was helping start a whole second company, and I was my children's assistant wrestling coach, running around to all these mats and helping coach all these kids all week and all weekend. And I was like, how the heck did I get here? I was struggling to get out of bed, and how am I doing all this stuff? And I just don't have an issue with energy. That's kind of shocking coming from where I was. So we have people using it for all sorts of chronic health conditions, everything from stroke, CTE, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, cancer, chronic fatigue, Lyme, long COVID, autoimmunity, so many different things. And some of the turnabouts are really, really shocking, to be quite honest. It's kind of amazing when you give the body, and the body is incredibly intelligent. I always hate when Western medicine, you were talking about that fatalism. Oh, you've got this genetic, and no one wants to talk about epigenetics. And I'm always like, how did humanity live 500,000 years if, our body just suddenly broke for no reason, if the machinery is defective at such a high rate? And it's like, when you give the body what it needs, it will do the work. And I guess the thing that really strikes me about it is, it's your point that you can do it in 15 minutes. It'll give your body the energy to help it recover. It'll help you detoxify. It'll help reduce the inflammation, which is at the root of just about every chronic health condition there is. It's like you're hitting multiple things, and you're doing it in a relatively low amount of time where you can do it consistently over time.
Now, you're taking EWOT and bringing it to the chronically ill. But my understanding is EWOT started for endurance athletes, for example, you got football teams who need to go, they're used to sea level, and then they got to go to Denver to and it's
Yep.
I'm just like, how are they doing that? I go to Denver,
Totally.
and I'm like, I know people who go
Need
to
a nap.
Denver and they're super sick. I tell them, take chlorella and spirulina, start eating it before you go, and then the whole time take chlorella and spirulina while you're energybits.com, little plug, coupon code LTH Energy Bits. Those are my favorite. But it will turn off the altitude sickness because it also helps increase oxygen. Mm-hmm. But you've got these athletes who they have to train to be able to withstand any altitude. Yeah. And when you go to Denver, there's the low oxygen environment, and they're not used to that. And they've got to compete against teams they train there. They go train in the mountains. So that's my understanding, that's the origins, right? Is to actually help the most elite athletes in the world be even better. Is that true?
Some of the deepest research on EWOT is athletes doing it. And I mean, so we've got a research page on our website where we cite all this stuff. And there's some pretty amazing stuff in there. I mean, your VO2 max increases of 8 to 12%, which is huge. Massive increases in power output. I talked about my ability to lift more weights, and I wasn't trying to lift more weights. I'm, middle-aged man. I was time constrained. I was like, I'm only going to do 3 sets of 10. And if I needed to do more than 10, I was putting more weight on the bar because I just didn't have time for it. That's the truth.
No, that's actually, sorry to interrupt, but so there's a study where they took 2 groups of women, and they gave them, because that's the theory, right? It's what builds muscle? Is it to failure or fatigue, right? And so they wanted to figure this out. They gave one group of women high weight, so let's say 60 pounds, and 6, you're doing it 6 times, right?
Yep.
So 6 reps, 3 sets, 60 pounds. And so they took the same total of weight, and they gave it to the second group, but they said, now you're doing 20 reps, or whatever the calculation ended up being, let's say 20 pounds, or instead of 60 pounds. So it's basically and each woman was a bit different, obviously, but what they would do is they would have them get to fatigue, not failure. So failure is when you're and you're struggling, and you can't pump out the very last one. Rep. You can't, it's and the burning started four reps ago, right? And then fatigue is 3 to between 2 and 4 before that happens. So it's burning, and you feel like you can almost You can still about 2 to 3 more. You feel like
You're
can get
losing
there.
confidence in how many more you can do.
But you got to start feeling the burn. You still feel like maybe you're slowing down as you're like pushing that out. But you're not failure yet. So they did this, and after I think it was 12 weeks, don't quote me on that, but it was a long enough period where it's like you've built muscle. They had the exact same results. But so that was the question. What's more effective? More reps and less weight, or bigger weight and fewer reps? And the answer was both are equally, as long as you get to fatigue. But here's the thing. The women who did the higher reps, so lower weight, had more injuries. They had more. It was enough to make them not want to continue working in the gym. Like they kind of like gauged their motivation, because they had developed bursitis and tendonitis and all these itises from so much repetition. So it's actually better to do, like you said, that's me in the gym, same as you. I'm like, I don't have time for this. I'm like upping it to 60. I'm pumping out 4 or 5, like, you know what I mean?
Yep.
I'm pumping out as much as I can, but I'm gonna increase the weight and get to fatigue, almost failure. So anyways, that's like you said that. I thought that was funny. But when I'm thinking about you in the gym doing EWOT, you're not breathing in the oxygen while you're in the gym, right? You're not while you're lifting weights.
You can. So what you described at the end, the burning comes from when our body runs out of oxygen, and it starts burning and creating lactic acid. That's the metabolic waste we were talking about, which causes damage and slows recovery. So we were talking about athletic performance. It's also known to enhance, speed up recovery, improve power output, improve endurance, improve VO2 max. So it's like in just about any metric it's used, it helps with athletic performance. So some folks will do lifting with the mask on, and they can do more lifting with it. I don't like to do it because you got this mask and this hose on your face and it's kind of a little bit awkward. What I normally would do is I would do my weightlifting session, and then immediately after I would do an EWOT session and blast out that lactic acid, because that lactic acid, as I mentioned, it slows recovery. It causes more damage while it's in there. And the way your body gets rid of lactic acid is through an oxidation reaction where it detoxifies it and breaks it down further, and components in it become energy and components of it are detoxified. So that's kind of that's why I do EWOT after I weightlift.
Did you experiment with doing EWOT before weightlifting versus after? Because I imagine if you did your 15-minute session, then went to the gym, you're fully saturated, you got lots of oxygen in you, and then wouldn't you then it take longer to hit that lactic acid, that anaerobic?
Well, it probably would, but in my case, because I sweat so much, I don't think they'd let me in the gym. That's one of my genetic predispositions. They might not like so much if I walked in there after a 15-minute session. They make, whoa, can you go shower and come back? But no, seriously, what you're describing is exactly true. A lot of the benefits of exercise come from post-exertional excess oxygen consumption. So after we get done exercising, even regular exercise, we have this elevated heart rate for a while. Our metabolism is increased, and so we consume more oxygen, and that's part of the benefit. And the other thing that is part of the benefit of exercise, which is important and relevant, is there's something called capillary rarefaction, which is as we get older, we lose more and more capillaries. And so your capillary density can go down as much as 20%. And to put that into context, that can be 10,000 miles of capillaries we lose by the time we're in our 70s and 80s.
Jeez.
So, and one of the ways you fight this is by exercising. So this is one of the reasons why exercise is so important. It's like everyone understands that as you age, maybe your brain's not as sharp, maybe you don't have as much energy, maybe your bones get brittle. We all understand that, but for some reason, people don't really imagine that your cardiovascular system ages in that same way, unless we're talking about arterial plaque or something like that. But it does, it becomes aged. And so then you have less capillaries and you have more swelling in the ones you do have. So what do you think is happening to all of these cells? Is they're becoming less energized. And what happens as we age, we assume that it's natural with aging to have less energy. when in fact, a large part of it is exactly this physiological thing that's happening. So when you're exercising, you're actually causing your body to maintain and actually grow new capillaries, which is so important.
Yeah, I have a functional medicine doctor in my life who is in her 80s, and she was in the Olympics twice, is in her 80s, and she runs marathons in the desert. And I know of
Wim Hof.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And like Dr. Esselstyn's wife, who just got a Guinness World Record she's like 93 or 94. And she could probably whip my butt in the gym. Like, she's amazing, but she got a Guinness World Record for like hanging from a bar. Like it was like 4 minutes or something. It was some crazy yeah. And it's like, you have to remember that there are people who are even 100 years old who are incredibly physically athletic.
Yep.
And there's like gymnasts, like 90-year-old gymnasts who are competing. And I just love watching those because this is your mindset. If you look at the statistics, let's say United States, like most listeners are probably from the US, but I know we have listeners all around the world. But let's just say, take your country and look at the average health of a person in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90, 100, right? Look at the average health, right? If you want to be average, keep doing what everyone else is doing. If you want to be on 7 medications, in a wheelchair, peeing yourself, like someone having to wipe your butt, you know what I mean? Like, if that's what you want, you're the last 30 years of your life to look like, keep drinking alcohol, eating fried food, like doing what everyone else is doing. Right?
Yeah.
That's, you go with the flow. This is the statistically, if we do what the majority of the people are doing, we're going to get the results of the majority. Right? Now, if you want to rage against that, and you want to be those outliers that are 90 years old and completely healthy, have no restrictions. They wake up full of energy, no brain fog. They feel like they're in their 20s and their 90s. Like, if you want that, then you have to go against the status quo. You have to be willing to try things and do things that are not the opposite of not opposite, but just like not what everyone else is doing. Because we're not going to get optimal health doing what everyone else is doing. And so I like to look at those people who are 80, 90, 100 years old and really athletic, and you look at them and they're like, they're either eating incredibly, or they've been exercised their entire lives, or they just have a really positive mental outlook. Like, there's no negative thoughts whatsoever, right? Like, look at what they're doing differently. And so I love that. Like, do not have that belief in your mind that when you imagine yourself in your senior years, you imagine like what your grandparents or what the average senior, like, don't let Hollywood and this idea of like being crippled, like, don't let that into your psyche, right? Imagine yourself 30 years in the future, 50 years in the future, and you see yourself healthier than you are now. Right. And that is the belief. And there's so many studies that prove that what you imagine is what your body believes. So imagine that every day, right? Imagine you are healthier a year from now. You are healthy, and you don't even have to believe it. You can not believe it. It's okay. But imagining it and seeing yourself like in a mirror a year from now, visualizing it healthier, symptom free. And keep doing that. Like, that is programming your mind and your brain and your body that's what you're getting. And there's studies that show that it works. It's incredible. So, okay. I love that you've talked about like the science behind this. And you did mention that we're going to talk about adding the red light and also about the cancer and starved oxygen. If people want to see like what, like, are there places where they can see like what happens into labs? Like they're like want hard evidence. Like, can they see that, did they do studies where they saw inflammatory markers go down? Or do you know what I mean? Like, like you said, you have research maybe on your website. Can you talk about where people can go, or do you have any studies that you can quote? Because I think some people are like you, they were sick and they've tried so many things, and they like, if you show them like, here, this actually does 100%. It's shown in labs. so I think there's always some skeptical people, because I was that person. I'm like the most open-minded skeptic, and I was so sick. And it's like, if you have a limited amount of money to throw at something, but you really want results, some people are like,
Yeah.
I like, some people think, well, you know what? A website can fake testimonials. I'm not saying you do, but I think some people could think that.
Right.
So what can you show us that's like indisputable proof that this is something absolutely amazing that would be very beneficial, especially to chronically ill people?
Yeah, that's a great question. I agree. I was a skeptic, and I always appreciate a skeptic. So that is the reason why we built our research page on our website. You can go there and see research studies on EWOT. We've got research on it for athletic performance, a ton of that, long COVID, etc. There's a ton of research on oxygen and various health things. Now, there is also research that's applicable from hyperbaric, because what we talked about was hyperbaric, how it works. Both of them actually work through something called Henry's Law. So there's a little bit of more physiology for you. When you're breathing oxygen normally, you're filling your red blood cells with oxygen, and your red blood cells are like probably 98% of capacity, meaning there's not real room in your red blood cells for more oxygen. So you would think that no oxygen therapy would give you any benefit. But the reason why it works is Henry's Law isn't a physiology principle. It's actually a chemistry principle. It doesn't matter if the chemistry is live or dead. That when you have a gas like oxygen on an insoluble liquid, a liquid that normally won't accept it, the more pressure there is of that gas, the more of it will go into solution. And so what happens when you're breathing oxygen, either through hyperbaric or EWOT, you force some of that oxygen into your blood plasma, which is this clearish brown liquid that normally doesn't carry oxygen. It's not normally a major oxygen vehicle for us. It might carry 2% of all oxygen. And so you saturate that with oxygen. And why that's important is not only does it increase the capacity of your blood for carrying oxygen, but it also is 1,000 times thinner than a red blood cell. So it can, think of it's basically water with some nutrients and other things in it. And so it can pass through all these blockages in our capillaries and get to places and immediately restore oxygen while it's causing its anti-inflammatory effect. And that's true of hyperbaric, and that's true of EWOT. They both use that principle. And so even the research you'll find, there's a ton of research on hyperbaric in health, and those are generally applicable. The only difference is, I'd say, your body's incredibly intelligent. And so when you do hyperbaric, your body senses an overabundance of oxygen in your blood, and it tries to come to homeostasis. It tries to find a balancing point. And what it does to avoid getting too much oxygen is it causes vasoconstriction. Your blood vessels actually tighten up and shrink in diameter to try to stop. Now, even though they do that, you still manage to get more oxygen, which is why you get some great benefits from hyperbaric. Now, because when we're doing exercise with oxygen therapy, the tendency towards vasodilation, increased cross section of our circulatory system is much more prone, because exercise, it's like in a starvation mode. It's like, I need oxygen. It's not worried about too much. It's worried about too little. So we have a ton of research there. I think that's there. You'll find that. You'll also find a lot of great. You will find some testimonial videos. They are real customers. I think you can tell when you look at it. They're not particularly polished. We took them where they were. We have great reviews. They're verified by a third party. But if you're on the fence, I think the more important thing is go out and try it. So you can search EWOT near me, and you'll probably find a provider somewhat nearby. They're in chiropractors' offices. Sometimes they're in performance centers or biohacking centers. And if you can't find one near you, I recommend you reach out to us, because we often help folks find centers that have these in them, and give it 3 or 5 or even 10 sessions and give it a try and see how you feel. A lot of folks, they get done at their first session, or by their third session, they're like shocked at how much better they feel. And I think all of us know, like, I read so much research on, oh, I have autoimmunity, so I must have leaky gut. And if I fix that, I was going to be better. And I tried all the things, and like the research only goes so far. It's like, you know, show me the money sort of thing, show me the results. And I think that's what I recommend for folks. We tried because we're serving the chronic illness folks first, that's our primary customer in my heart, because that's where I come from. Although we serve a lot of other folks dealing with, you know, biohacking, longevity, and performance, we brought the price way down to make it affordable. But I always tell folks, like, if you're unsure, go do it. I think, you know, proof's in the pudding, and it's not that expensive to go try it out for 10 sessions and see how you feel. And, you know, if you're one of those folks who doesn't respond, then great, you saved yourself some money that you can focus on something else. And if you find it is working, you're going to be thrilled to come pay for the thing, because it's one of those things that, you know, it's a one-time investment and you'll have it for a decade or more.
Yeah. And you had mentioned before we hit record something about a coupon code, the coupon that you could provide for the listeners.
Yeah, absolutely.
Coupon code LTH. So I really appreciate that, giving a discount to my listeners. We're also going to make sure that the links are in the show notes of today's podcast. I'm definitely going to be linking that space on your website that talks about the research and the studies and the proof, right? But the as they say, the proof is in the pudding. The proof in the pudding is in the eating, which means you have to do it. You have to do it for yourself and experience it, and give it several weeks, if not months, to fully have its effect, while you're also tracking your symptoms. But knowing even day one, you're increasing oxygen to your body and decreasing inflammation, and increasing mitochondrial health. I mean, that is so cool. So to go back to you're 4 months in to doing this, and you're starting to feel results. At what point were you like, I no longer have Lyme? Like, your body beat the Lyme, which I've helped clients do that. I know there's the idea or stigma that like people need heavy drugs to kill Lyme, and your body has an amazing immune system, and we got to get it out of its own way. When we support the immune system to do what it needs to do, it can wipe out these things. But we have to get the inflammation out. We have to increase the mitochondrial health. Like that's why I love this is so direct. I love how EWOD is getting right to exactly what we need to do to get out of our own way so that the body can do what it needs to do. So how long until you were like, did you go back and get tested and you're like, yeah, you're negative? Like, how do you know you're no longer have Lyme and Bartonella?
Yeah, I don't believe I don't believe I'm negative. I believe if I tested, I'd probably test positive today and the rest of my life. What I describe it as is I'm like 98, 99% better. What that means to me is Lyme is not a part of my life anymore. Like maybe once or twice a year when it's rainy, I might feel a little twinge in my knuckle, and I'll be like, that feels arthritic. On the pain scale, I'd call it a 2. And it used to like give me PTSD. Like, oh gosh, am I going back here? This is scary. Yeah. And then I would realize like 4 hours later or the next day it was gone. I was like, oh, that's the extent of it. It's a persister bacteria. It's so hard to get rid of. But I think the thing I did early on that I feel was the wrong thing for me, at least, and I think for a lot of folks, is I focused so much on killing the infection, because it's exactly what you said, which is the body is so. I had Lyme. I realized I got it when I was in kindergarten. Okay, yeah. So now I had it from kindergarten, and I had weird symptoms, but nothing life really altering until my 30s, and so middle of my 30s, as a matter of fact, and so like. The goal isn't to kill it. Now, I will tell you, Lyme hates an oxygen-rich environment. It can't live in it. So it can actually kill off some of the Lyme, and it can cause die-off if you're not careful when you're starting up. But like the bigger thing is, if you have, to your point, if you have a competent immune system, if your cells have the energy they need to regenerate and repair, eventually you get a leg up on it. Because the thing I realized in all my research about Lyme, and it's so true of so many of these chronic infections, is Western medicine treats them like they're this dumb little single-celled organism. They don't know what they're doing. And they're so intelligent, Ashley. Like they're this hive mind, you're talking about how people are having these food cravings. Well, it's just a lot of times what they'll do is they'll yank on your vagus nerve and like give you this craving. So you'll eat something that'll help, you'll eat the Oreos that'll suppress your immune system and fill you with gluten. And, or it'll cause you to have poor sleep because it knows that knocks down your immune system. It'll cause you to have anxiety and depression and like negative thoughts because it knows it knocks down your immune system, and it makes it more hospitable. And then it creates all this inflammation. It actually triggers your immune system to attack yourself and give you this autoimmune dynamic. The immune system damages cells, so now the Lyme and the infections can enter those cells and hide from the immune system and replicate in there. So it's this whole ecosystem it creates. And when you can start giving the body the energy it needs so your immune system is firing more competently, you can detoxify the body so it's not all bogged down dealing with all of these waste products from the infectious agent and the quite frankly poor toxicity clearance and metabolic waste. All of a sudden it starts operating right. And it does what it does because every day each one of us is exposed to things that can make us sick. It doesn't just happen on the days you get sick. Every day you're breathing viruses in, you're coming in contact with bacteria that quite frankly, under the wrong circumstances can make you really ill and even kill you. But the immune system is there for a reason. And so if you can keep it competent, it keeps kind of a wrap on everything.
When did you start adding red light therapy to your EWOT?
I was about 6 months in. So red light's become, pretty popular since then. When I was looking at it, it wasn't really, there was like, you could find it in like a doctor's office and it was usually lasers. But I started doing more, as I started realizing this was working, I went back and started looking at red light and I realized it's really kind of fascinating why we need it. But I started realizing it was another mitochondrial health modality. And the reason red light works is it does two things, okay? It does two primary things that give us benefit. The first is it causes blood vessel dilation, vasodilation. It increases the cross-section of our blood vessels. So we talked about how we all, as we're aging, and especially when we're sick, we have this inflammation in our capillaries. Well, when you cause vasodilation, now you open them up so more red blood cells can get through. So that's one thing they're doing. But the second thing and the more powerful thing they do is they cause your mitochondria to utilize more oxygen and produce more energy. So you can see how these would pair well. You do EWOT and you flood your body with oxygen, and then you send this red light signal in, or this near infrared light signal in, that tells the mitochondria to suck up that oxygen and produce more energy from it. And so they become kind of this synergistic combination where when you do them together in the right sequence, it just amplifies the amount of energy your body's producing, which leads to all those positive downstream effects.
So you just have like a red light panel just like beaming at you while you're on your treadmill?
Well, I don't do that. What I do is the right sequence for most folks dealing with chronic health challenges or looking for general wellness is to do EWOT and then immediately after do red light. But I mean immediately, like don't go do a cool down and take a shower. Do it immediately because we talked about that post-exercise excess oxygen consumption. So you have excess oxygen floating around in your body when you get done with EWOT, and then you get under the red light and you send it the signal it needs to tell it to utilize that oxygen and maximize energy production. The reason we don't do it at the same time is red light it's a little bit technical, like it's a little bit like Goldilocks and the Three Bears, too little and you don't get any benefit. Too much doesn't cause any harm, but it also doesn't give you any benefit. So you want to hit that little sweet spot in the middle. And that involves how intense the light is, how far away from it you are, and how much time you spend under it. And so when you're moving and you're exercising, you can imagine your legs passing the light. It's getting closer and further and closer and further.
Oh.
And the second thing is you're clothed when you're working out. And so the clothes will reflect some of that light and reduce its impact. So the ideal state is you get done and, you strip down, or you strip down to your skivvies, so to speak, and you get underneath that red light, and immediately, so you're getting good skin exposure. And we try to make it simple though too. We take the tech, that no one wants to become an expert in it. They just want it to work, so to speak. And so with our panels, we have it so you basically just stand 6 to 12 inches away or lay 6 to 12 inches away, and you do it for about 7 to 10 minutes. Now, if you were to just do a normal red light session without your EWAT, you do about 10 or 15 minutes with our lights. But when you do it after EWAT, you shrink that down to about 7 to 10 minutes because you've already primed your mitochondria. And so you need less signal to get that, as we were talking about, that optimal dose.
Is there a optimal time to do EWAT? Like, do people get better results if they do it in the morning versus the evening? And also, same with red light. Is there an optimal time to do it? Because I imagine it's maybe changing the circadian rhythm or impacting it,
Yeah.
or could help positively impact it. So yeah, what's the timing like? Or does it matter? Just do it.
It does matter a bit. EWAT, it matters less if you're just doing EWAT. I generally recommend you start first thing in the morning because it can be very energizing. So sometimes we get folks, they get home from work, they get their new system, they set it up, and then at 8 o'clock at night, they want to do their first session, and they call me and tell me they didn't sleep, for several hours. It's not like coffee, like you're all jittery. It's just you're awake and you're alert. And so, and quite frankly, if it can also help with sleep quality, but I still don't recommend you do it, in the evening until you know how it affects you. Red light's interesting. So I'm going to back up just a step and explain why we need red light. I think it's pretty fascinating. So if you step out in the sunlight, like I was joking at the beginning of this interview, you get a full spectrum of light, everything from ultraviolet light through the whole visible spectrum, and then infrared on the other end, just past reds. And our body uses all that light for a variety of different things. And the red and the near infrared, they act as signals on our mitochondria, as I said. But as we've evolved, we've moved more and more indoors, so we are no longer getting all of that natural sunlight. And it gets worse because as we've all switched over to LED lighting and indoor lighting in particular, but especially LED lighting, it's made to be energy efficient, right? Everyone knows that we're saving money with these LED bulbs. The way to make it most efficient is to cut out all the reds and the near infrareds, because infrared light is experienced as heat in the body. And so you don't want to heat the room with lighting, is the thought. You want to use lighting that's visible. And so they use all these blues. So we all hear about how blues, you don't want to look at blues, late in the evening because it can affect your circadian rhythm, because blues are natural at noontime. So they're an alertness indicator to our body, and they affect our circadian rhythm. Now, reds and near infrareds are experienced most likely in the early morning time and in the evening time. So sunrise and sunset, when the sun's at those angles, is when we get the most red and near infrared. And so they have kind of different signaling. They can help us with, obviously, energy production and alertness when we do it early in the day. They also help with melatonin if we do it late in the evening, and can help with rest. So I generally recommend for most folks, obviously, if you're pairing it with EWAT, the best case, at least to start, is doing it early in the morning. You do EWAT and then immediately you do red light. It's about 25 minutes, let's say, or a little less, start to finish, and get it all in. Once you get experience with it, if you want to try to do it in the evening, that's fine too. I do have folks who do that, no problem. But yeah, you don't want to necessarily do red light in the middle of the day because you're just taking yourself out of that circadian rhythm. We want to help the body and give it the signal that it's missing. It's funny, but we're all like red and infrared light deficient. So it's almost like, think of it like a nutrient.
It is. There's actually receptors on our cells for photons.
That's right.
And so light and the spectrum of light is a nutrient, and this is creating photobiomodulation. The recent study I saw, I got so excited about it, is that they took a group of people and they studied their eyesight, and then they removed LED, gave them not even red light. This is just the incandescent bulbs, which have a natural spectrum that include red light. And
Yep.
they had them work at workstations. Like these were like I think university students that volunteered for. So they're like staring at screens and like in their off time, but they had them do all their studying and all their desk work only with incandescent bulbs. So zero fluorescent light, zero like this, like the if you, I'm sure my listeners are very educated. They may have heard of this, but some people who haven't, that incandescent is the healthiest bulb. You've already touched on that. And that LED, most unhealthiest bulb for us in terms of like our circadian rhythm, but also our eyesight. And it actually damages our eyesight. So they did this study, and it was only 3 months long, because they said that the professor joked. He's like, we would have done it longer, but it was like Christmas break. So he lost his subjects. So he had to basically wrap up his study. And so then they tested the eyesight of the students after they had basically all their studying was done with an incandescent bulb. So just a few hours a day. And they still had exposure to other bulbs when they were in other classrooms and stuff. And all of their eyesight across the board improved. And the improvement lasted even months later. He tested them again after they stopped using incandescent bulbs, and he saw that the benefit. And if you Google it, in fact, red light therapy can improve age-related vision decline and an enhanced color contrast. We actually lose that, with I don't want to say with age, because again, that's that mentality. Oh, it's because of my age. No, it's because you're exposed to free radical damage, nutrient deficiency. You're exposed to toxins. Lack of oxygen, like you name it, right? Fried food, and then also it helped relieve dry eye. Just adding the red therapy improves your vision. And this study was done with like 20-year-olds. So what kind of like vision loss that they've experienced, their age-related vision loss in their 20s, and they were able to reverse that, right? So just think about how important it is to first of all, remove all other unnatural light bulbs, go back to incandescent, and then add the red light therapy is so important. I love that you talked about morning and evening are the best times to do red light. And, like let's say they got the EWAT and the red light. They're doing the EWAT 3-4 times a week. They could still do the red. If they wanted to, they could do red light twice a day if they wanted to, if they like that idea. I know that especially for women, I don't know, maybe men feel vain also, but for women, red light increases collagen production. Also, actually, it also can increase hair growth. So for men who maybe are conscious of their balding, it stimulates the follicles to have healthier hair, stimulates skin to have healthier skin. But what else does it do? That's why I like to say, if you see results on the outside, what's it doing on the inside? You know what I mean? Like
that's exactly, and but the interesting thing is that it all boils down to the same mechanism, which is it's causing each one of those cells to have excess energy production. Yes. So now a skin cell is like, hey, I have extra energy. I can invest it in developing more collagen, what a skin cell is supposed to do. A liver cell's like, hey, I can regenerate and create new liver cells. Same thing with the eyes. I was smiling because I had a conversation with someone who's recovering from a stroke who called me the other day, and he was saying how he just watched this podcast with Joe Rogan talking about how he improved his eyesight with red light, and so he was excited to try it. The one thing I'll tell your listeners, very important, if you do want to try it for eyesight, there's a difference between red and near infrared. So red light.
Oh yeah, big difference. I'm so glad you brought that up.
So red light, very good for the eyesight. Research on it can improve eyesight because it's doing all the things we talked about. Near infrared, because it's experienced as heat, can actually damage the eyes. So when you do a red light panel, like ours has 4 red wavelengths and 4 infrared wavelengths, so 8 total. You can turn off the infrared if you wanted to, if you wanted to look at the light and help with your eyes. If you want to, now the spectrums act different in the body. Basically, every wavelength, the shorter the wavelength, the more red it is. The am I saying it wavelength? Yeah. And the longer the wavelength, the more infrared it is. And the higher the number, the deeper the penetration into the body. So the infrareds penetrate deeper, and so they'll affect deeper tissues, and the reds affect, to your point, the skin cells and all of that. So if you're going to affect your eyes, you look at red and you turn the infrared off, and you can look at it without the glasses. If you're going to go under it for the full benefits, including the infrared, you put the glasses on when you're underneath the red light and facing it, just to protect your eyes.
Awesome. I love that your panels have those choices, because I know, like, I have a sauna. The Sunlight and Sauna has near, mid, and far infrared, and the near specifically is for collagen production, and also helps, I believe, with pain, and decreasing that inflammation. People with, like, I've heard people that go jogging and their pain is also, or their knees swollen. They'll put it up against the near infrared panel, and they feel good afterwards. So you're getting that result, but also you're, like you said, it also has the red light itself. So you've got both of that. Okay, so there's red light and EWAT together, which people can do.
Yep.
And the last thing I wanted to touch on was discussing cancer and its relation to starved oxygen cells. I love this as a concept, and you're ballsy for even bringing it up, because I know there's so many experts who are like, they don't want to mention the C word because they're worried, like, the big government will come after them. How dare you try to help people, heal themselves of cancer? How dare you? Only we only do cut, burn, and poison. We only do chemotherapy. How dare you offer an alternative to the mainstream medical monopoly? So talk about the research there of cancer not being able to thrive in an oxygen-rich environment.
Yeah, so like I had mentioned, the very earliest research I'm aware of on the topic was a gentleman named Otto Warburg in the 1920s and 30s. He was doing research, and he won a Nobel Prize for the research, where effectively he was able to show that he could turn a normal cell into a cancerous cell by starving it of oxygen. So keep in mind that we've known this for about a century. So this isn't new. And the research still comes out quite regularly. If you look at survival rates of people with cancer, it's directly proportional to the oxygen status of the tumor. More oxygen, higher survival rate. So what you have to understand is how cancer works is cancer works through fermentation, through glycolysis, what we call anaerobic respiration, meaning it produces its energy without oxygen. And so it's a metabolic disease at its root. And so what happens to your body when cells start running out of oxygen and they go into this oxygen deficit, the body in all of its wisdom says, hey, we're not getting enough oxygen here. We need to build new blood vessels. It's called angiogenesis. So it releases a chemical called VEGF, vascular endothelial growth factor, which causes you to grow these new endothelial cells, these new capillaries that will deliver more oxygen to the tissue. And cancers actually signal for VEGF to start releasing so that you will produce new blood vessels, because it then uses that to metastasize, right? So it actually it starves the cells of oxygen, and then when the cells start to fight back, it uses that as a superhighway to spread. Now, if you were to use traditional cancer therapies, chemotherapy and radiation are what is known as oxidative therapies. They work through that oxidative reaction, the same one we were talking about that's necessary for detoxification or similar. And so if you don't have oxygen in that tumor and you try to use radiation and chemo, it will be resistant. It will not work. It requires oxygen to work. So a ton of research showing survival rates of cancer are directly related to oxygen status, to showing that tumors are hypoxic, meaning they're oxygen starved, and to showing that cancer therapies, whether it's traditional or alternative, require oxygen in order to reverse the cancer. And so, and I mean, this is not woohoo science. I mean, this is by big universities. We've got a blog article on our website where I list some of it. It's too voluminous to list every piece of research showing the linkage between cancer and oxygen. So it's important to get oxygen to your tumor, even if you didn't want to go an alternate route and you want to do traditional. We have a lot of folks who are using it with traditional cancers because, number one, it will help the chemo and the radiation work better. But number two, it also helps with detoxification. So it'll help get the chemotherapy out. It will help get rid of the damaged cells from the radiation and the dead cell debris out, so it's not clogging up our system and causing free radicals and causing more tissue damage, which is every bit as important. And of course, it helps with energy and the brain fog that comes with some of those as well. So we have folks on all ends of the spectrum who are using it to assist in their kind of recovery journey, if you will. It's really impressive, I would say. And it's kind of shocking. Like, this is one of those moments when I started to do the research early on and I stumbled upon it. I'm like, why is nobody talking about it? Why can you go to an oncologist and they wouldn't even know about something as innocuous as oxygen? Because it's just oxygen, for crying out loud, right?
But it's a specific way in which it's delivered. Like, if someone were to just sit there and put on an oxygen, like the little tube that they put up the nose, right?
Yeah, cannula.
Like, that is going to increase their saturation a little bit, like 2%, maybe. Like maybe they're sitting at like 97 and they go to like 99, or maybe they go to 100. So they got they have 3%. But that's not, they need that, like you said, they either need that pressure or they need the exercise to be able to saturate the plasma. And then it gets into the mitochondria. Then it gets into the capillaries. I think you said what do you say, capillaries or capillaries?
Capillaries.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm from Canada originally. It's capillaries in British English. And
I know you guys like aluminium, and I can never say aluminium, even though that's the right way to say it.
We don't say that in Canada, but we do say capillaries. We're holding on to that one. Yeah, so the oxygen it needs that extra, like either the hyperbaric or the exercise. I think exercise is easier than getting into the hard shell $75,000 hyperbaric. But I've seen those alternative cancer centers have hyperbaric. They're aware of it. And I like that you brought up the question, why doesn't the average oncologist know this? There's so much research to support people with cancer that the oncologists don't know. And this is the question so many people have. If it were important, my doctor would know it.
Yeah.
And then they close the door in their mind. They become very closed-minded. They go, I'm just going to do what my doctor said. I trust my doctor. My doctor is only going to bring me the latest and greatest information.
Yeah.
I'm like, listen, I've interviewed doctors and I've asked the same question. So holistic doctors, right? That started out as medical doctors. And I've asked them this question. I have over 500 interviews. I've asked this question dozens of times. And this is the answer they give. These are mostly like Harvard, like Ivy League doctors, and they've spent like $500,000 on their education, right? They've got bills to pay. And they said the entire educational complex, it teaches them that what they're taught is everything they need to know. And if they're not taught it, it's not worth knowing. And that is the attitude that medical schools instill. And then the doctor gets hired as an oncologist in an institution. There are independent oncologists, but most of the time you're going to go to one that's associated with a collective, right? And they have rules. So most of the time when you go to
standard of care,
you go down to like you name it, whatever hospital. It's a network, and the doctor has to follow the protocol, like you said, standard of care. They're not allowed to go outside of that. And their hands are tied also because they have bills to pay. They've got $500,000 in loans to pay. Yep. They've got a mortgage. They've got kids going to private school or whatever. And they don't want to step out of line. And it's not that most doctors obviously are not malicious, but
No.
they're seeing so many patients that they don't have time to dive into the latest research. Like there's amazing research around fasting before chemo. Now I'm not an advocate of chemo. I'm like, it would be the last thing I would ever do. But I'm
Totally.
also pragmatic, right? So there's
Yeah.
studies that show just fasting for 3 days before chemo significantly increases your survival rate and significantly decreases symptoms. Why isn't this recommended to everyone? Why?
I mean, I've got
Why?
a good friend who's non-oncologist who's gone into, now her whole practice is helping people do fasting in their recovery journey for cancer. And I mean, yeah, why wouldn't
That's
you?
free.
I mean,
It's free. Everyone can do it. Like you could start, like if you're scared of fasting, like start with a 24-hour fast. Like drink some, if you're hungry, drink some psyllium or psyllium in water, right? Like just, there's ways to,
well,
like, or there, drink
and you
some
don't have to
tea.
commit to doing it. You don't have to commit to doing it for 3 days. You can just say, I'm going to keep doing it. And
And
when I'm not comfortable, I'm going to stop.
yeah,
Like,
exactly. But the point being, it's absolutely free to do. And why isn't every like there's studies, you can just Google it. Why are
they make you,
oncologists
and by the way, they make you fast if you're going to do like an endoscopy. I can't say that
right,
today.
or a colonoscopy.
Right.
Yeah,
A
There's
colonoscopy.
medical procedures you get to fast for, right?
Yeah.
But the point being is that it's free. Everyone who's going in through chemotherapy should be told this information. It's public knowledge. It's free. Why aren't they doing that? So there's dozens and dozens of amazing things that people can do to support their body's ability to no longer have cancer. And the endocrinologist or the oncologists do not know this information. And some of them, if they do, their hands are tied. This is why we have to advocate for ourselves. This is why you can go and listen to a doctor, then go get a second opinion in a different network. That's so important. You have to make sure they're not associated with that first doctor. Go get a second opinion, a completely different network. Then find a doctor that's independent. Get an opinion from them. Get a multiple diagnosis. You know what I mean? Like get multiple opinions and collect information from other sources. Don't just go with the first thing that the first cancer doctor says, because that's something that in the series The Truth About Cancer, they interview cancer survivors, they interview holistic cancer doctors, and they all say the same thing. When you are first diagnosed with cancer and you go into a hospital, they will try to put you on the conveyor belt as soon as possible. And it's like honestly like a timeshare salesman level pressure to get. I was like, okay, so today's Monday, tomorrow you're going to come in for your port, and Wednesday you're going to start your chemo, and then we're booking your surgery for a week from Sunday. It's like they're going to try to get you on, and once you're on that, it's harder to get off of the conveyor belt. This is why it's good to slow down, ask questions, get third opinions, and collect information. And do your research, do your advocacy. Always have someone with you at every one of your appointments taking notes or recording it. Because there is not one doctor on this planet that has 100% of your best interests at heart and that has all the information you need. They can't.
And that second part's important. Like, not everyone knows everything. The other thing I found in my whole medical mystery journey is you have to learn to trust your body. Like, even taking out poor incentive systems. Imagine you've got the best doctor in the world and they've got the best tools. You have like infinite sensors in your body. And if your body is telling you something's wrong or doesn't make sense, every time you don't listen to it, I find vast majority of the time people regret not listening to that voice. So if your voice is telling you, like that was me, my voice telling me, Brad, like you're going to end up on your deathbed if you keep doing this. You can't just blindly follow it. That was like a moment where I finally said, okay, I'm done listening to the expert. I've got to listen to myself. And I feel like that's something people kind of neglect themselves. They assume that they should just turn off their brain and listen to the doctor because the blood test says whatever it says. It's like, yeah, but is that what your body's telling you? If you're like, when he told me, no, those symptoms aren't related to your arthritis, I was like, there is something wrong with this guy. Like, I know it is. He doesn't. And, in retrospect, yeah, it was the same disease causing it all. And to your point about best intentions, this was an eye opener for me. So I was taking these drugs for arthritis. And one of the requirements for the drugs is they tell you can't take it if you have an active infection. And they actually make you test for tuberculosis before you can get on these drugs, because if you took it with an infection like a tuberculosis infection, you could die because they're suppressing your immune system. Now, the other thing they know is the way Lyme disease was discovered was in the 1970s. A bunch of kids got arthritis in Old Lyme, Connecticut, and that's how it got its name. And so it's very well known that Lyme disease can cause arthritis. And guess how many rheumatologists make you get tested for Lyme disease before they'll give this to you? None. None of them will ever test you for Lyme disease before they give you these drugs. And I actually had an argument with a rheumatologist once because my child also has arthritis. And she was like, well, and she was like, this is what the doctor told me. She said, look, yeah, we treat people with Lyme with this all the time. I know that the drug company says you can't give it to them with an infection, but that's just the lawyers. That's what she told me. And I said, well, and let me guess who's telling you to give it to her. It's probably just the salespeople, right? She's like, yeah, but I'm not affected by salespeople. And I laughed at her. I said, let me explain to you something. Pharmaceutical companies, the one competency we can say they have is they apply a treatment and they measure the difference between those who are treated and not treated. Do you think they didn't use that same science when they figured out they were going to spend billions of dollars on a sales force? Are you the one person who's not affected by the sales force? I was like, that's insane. But so they are purposefully turning a blind eye to this thing. That is not a mistake. That is a feature of it, is they make more revenue. And if you turn out to have it, they say, well, we told you not to take it if you had the thing. We didn't, yeah. So did you test for the thing? That's on you. So and the doctors, I don't think, I had some really good doctors, so I won't dog all doctors. I think they come into it with a lot of bad information. And I think oftentimes they're taught not to question it. To your point, standard of care. I mean, at some point, why do we even have a human in the room? Why don't we just have AI run its algorithm on us?
Just wait.
Right? Yeah, exactly. It's to some point there, you have to be super smart to become a doctor, but at some point we dumb them down to the point the freedom of choice is so little that it's basically they're forced to run an algorithm on you, and it's not their fault. But to your point, that whole livelihood depends on them doing it.
Yeah. This is why I do my podcast. I was sick for so many years and no doctor had answers for me, and I had multiple diseases or diagnosis, and I was able to reverse it naturally by doing what you did, by going down the rabbit hole, by, listening to holistic doctors, by trial and error. And it was largely nutrition that I was able to completely turn my health around. I had chronic adrenal fatigue, chronic infections, polycystic ovarian syndrome, infertility, and type 2 diabetes. And I reversed all of them using natural medicine after a decade of doctors saying, this is your life. This is what you're going to have for the rest of your life. These are the drugs you're going to be on for the rest of your life. And I raged against it. I'm glad, I'm so fortunate that that's my natural disposition is to go against, and I know there's some people who that is so hard for them because they're like, I don't want my doctor to be angry at me. I'm like, this is your doctor does not think about you the minute you walk out that door. This is your life. You've got to take
their egos. Yeah. Their ego's not as important as your life. So you got to put that in the right order.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Brad, it's been amazing talking to you today. We're going to make sure all the links are in the show notes of today's podcast at learntoyourhealth.com or wherever everyone's listening from. But also, can you tell us your website and tell us a little bit about what it looks like. Okay, I'm going to call you guys up or buy it online. How does it work to get this EWAT and red light system in my home?
Yep. So we sell them through online. You can go to 1000roads.com, all spelled out, ONETHOUSANDROADS. And you can go there. If you have questions, you can reach out to us via email on the website or give us a call. We'll have another human on the other side to answer your questions, because I know when I was dealing with chronic illness, I needed to talk to someone. I was too foggy to read through 5,000 pages on a website. Or even a paragraph sometimes. So let me not oversell myself there. So we have people who can answer your questions. We're glad to help. We're not a hard sales sort of organization. We try to be helpful. It's kind of it's an act of love, and paying it forward is what I started the company on. And yeah, we have them in stock. So, place an order and we'll have it shipped out to you relatively quickly. You can have it within a week or less. EWAT system's probably going to take you, like I said, it's like a 6 foot by 6 foot kind of balloon looking thing, and a little machine that's probably, maybe 1.5 feet, 2 feet tall and maybe a foot wide. You just plug it into the wall and flip a switch. It's not it looks more intimidating than it is, but I had a little old grandma put it together in 15 minutes the other day, it told me. And we sell the red light panels, super simple. We try to make everything simple because I know what it's like if you're foggy brained and you're exhausted. And so that's the idea. Simple protocol, simple products to put together, simple to maintain, simple to use. And if you have questions, real humans behind it.
And make sure you mention LTH as the coupon code to get the listener discount. Thank you for that.
That's right. Thank you.
So you say it's easy to set up, but what if someone's like just needs that extra confidence? Can they call and talk? Can someone talk them through as they set it up, or are there like videos they follow? How does that work?
Yep, we have videos on the site, and we definitely will talk through it with you. We have folks on occasion call us confused, but I'll tell you, most of the folks who are thinking I'm going to be confused, they're surprised at how easy it is. It's like hang this reservoir and plug in a couple hoses and flip a switch, and away you go, sort of thing. So yeah, really simple. And then the other place, if they want to learn more, we also have a YouTube channel. Our handle is 1000 Roads HQ, all spelled out. And we're putting together fresh videos every week, so they can go there and learn more, and probably get some of their questions answered there. And also we have the assembly videos and everything else there.
That's neat to be able to see it and be like, oh, okay, that's what it looks like. I'm imagining like, where am I going to put this in my house? And like when it's deflated, you can tuck it away. It's not going to be there all the time. Yeah,
you can, and you can hang it from the ceiling if you like, to get it out of the way. It usually sits, if you've got a piece of cardio equipment, it sits beside it pretty nicely. Maybe take up 2.5, 3 feet next to it, sort of thing, and away you go. If you don't, we have folks who, I even have a lady who uses it in a mobile home, and she rolls it up. She hangs it and rolls it up above her bed and uses it. So,
oh my gosh.
People have gotten creative. That's the great things, to your point, is when there's no oxygen and it doesn't have to take up a whole lot of space.
How much does it weigh to hang it? Because I'm thinking of where I'd hang it. 3 pounds. Okay, so it's a bag of oxygen, right? It's not.
Yeah.
It's not super heavy.
It's probably less than 3 pounds. It's 3 pounds with the shipping package of that whole thing.
And I'm aware that there's certain plastics that off gas. Can you speak to the non-toxic nature, I'm hoping, of your equipment?
Yeah, it's a great question. I always joke, I wish we could make it out of cow bladders, but no one's figured that out yet. So yes, it is made out of a plastic. It's made out of a food grade plastic. It's actually the same plastic they would use in your bread bags, your frozen food bags, your ketchup bottles, etc. And if you think about it, like in your ketchup bottle, assume you have ketchup, you've got an acidic liquid in a cold storage, in your refrigerator, which is a very harsh environment. What we're talking about is oxygen at room temperature, sitting in there for a period of, minutes to hours, sort of thing. So it's a much less stress environment, but we use a food grade plastic, so it doesn't have any of the phthalates in it or plasticizers. It has to be a virgin plastic to be food grade. So it keeps the harshest of chemicals out. So it's just a pure plastic. And then that and all the hosing and the mask and everything are medical grade components. And so we make it out of the what I'd say are the safest of plastics you can get your hands on. And I always tell folks, like, the risks we think about with plastic are carcinogens and endocrine disruptors are the two things we kind of think about. Obviously, oxygen is incredibly anti-cancer. We have folks who are using it coming back from like things like really difficult cancers like pancreatic cancer, stage 4 cancers, etc. We have folks who are like dealing with chronic mold issues and all of the chemical sensitivities that are using it. So yeah, it's as safe as can be in the world of plastic. I'm not going to tell you it's 100% safe. I don't know that anything really is. I don't even think the filtered water I drink is 100% safe. But it's kind of a kind of a net benefit sort of thing, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And then how long does it take for the bag to fill up?
It's great. We have 2 different models. We have a 10-liter model and a 5-liter model. The biggest difference is how long it takes to fill them. The 5-liter takes about 3 hours to fill, and the 10-liter takes about 90 minutes. Now, the way we've designed our system a little different in that it's able to be used with like an outlet timer, like you'd use with your Christmas lights.
Yes, I was going to ask, like, can it start filling up at 6 in the morning or like 5 in the morning?
That's exact. I actually use a smart outlet, and I set it on a timer, and it'll just fire up in the morning, and I'll get up at 6 in the morning, and it's filled and ready for me. Because I always joke, we're asking Americans to exercise. If we asked them to pre-plan exercise, we should have just filed for bankruptcy on day one. So I wanted to make it at least easy for folks to be able to use it. So yeah, for most folks, that's what they do. They just put it on a schedule, and they get up in the morning sort of thing. It's ready for them when they're ready, and away they go.
But if they had the 3-hour one, I mean, how long does oxygen last in the bag? Does it start leaching out of the bag? Could they like hit the button when they go to bed and then 8 hours later use it?
Oh, I don't recommend that. And the reason is our reservoirs are made to breathe a little bit, meaning the oxygen will bleed out. And the reason why we do that is because if it was perfectly sealed, it could cause a mold condition if somebody were to misuse it and inject moisture, like their hot breath in there somehow. It could cause a mold situation. And I'm kind of, like I said, my first principle in designing this is do no harm. So even though it was an unlikely scenario, I just didn't want to be in the situation where I found out someone misused it and started breathing a bunch of mold spores. So it should be filled right before use. But like I said, you can automate it. If you're going to have multiple users, you definitely want the larger machine. If you are someone who wants flexibility in your day, you're going to probably want the larger machine. It's going to last longer as well because it's used half as long for each session. The smaller machine, though, is designed really for this chronic illness community, folks who are like tight on cash. It's hard to work. It's hard to earn money. It's hard to spend it because you're spending it on a lot of things. When I started doing this, no one was really offering a 5-liter model, and that was kind of one of our goals on bringing the price down. And I know I talked about the price at the beginning of this, but the price is, it's $1,900 for our smaller one, and it's $2,500 for our larger one before the discount. So.
And like for some people, they're going to be like, oh, that's such a lot of money. But for others, they're going to be like, it's only $2,000. Like in comparison to like going to a clinic and being able to do EWAT at a clinic over time. Or because you said you can have this, it's going to last 10 years or longer. Yep. I mean, I've bought a sauna for, $4,000. And I mean, I love it. It's amazing. But like just to think like half the price of my sauna and I could be doing EWAT. I've actually wanted to do it for years because I've seen the research and I've been, aware of it. I had a guest talk about it a few years ago, and it was his like biggest longevity piece of advice, like for biohacking, for like if you want to live to be 100 and be healthy, he's like, do exercise with oxygen therapy. Like that was his one, and that's when I got into it and started looking into it, and I'm like, oh, this is like too out of reach for me. I can't do it in my home. I have to go somewhere. Like it was expensive, and now it's like I can do it, which is really really exciting. And I'm very intrigued to try it and do it, and then go to the gym, like you said, go to the gym, then come home and do it, and see the results that happen over time. I'm fortunate that I've recovered my health. I'm out of the woods, and now I'm constantly looking to take my health to the next level.
Right.
But I'm no longer in chronic illness like I was for so many years. And obviously I wish I'd had this 18 years ago, but I'm glad I'm so fortunate for my journey because it informed me and taught me. And it's why I started the podcast, because once I reversed my issues, I was like, I have to help people get this information out there. So thank you for coming on the show and sharing this. I'm sure this was like new information for many people. Brad, this has been very eye-opening. And again, of course, the links to everything you do are going to be in the show notes of today's podcast at learntrout.com, along with the coupon code LTH for listeners to check out. Again, thank you for the discount. I know you've emptied out and you've said so much, but I like to always ask, is there anything you want to share with the listener to wrap up today's interview? Maybe like just a piece of advice or some homework to help wrap up today's interview.
I think I said two of them, and I would like to repeat them. The first thing is, make sure you listen to your body. If you're hearing something from a medical provider, even if it's an alternate health provider or a functional medicine doctor that you trust and it doesn't feel right, listen to your body. I don't think you'll regret that. And number two, how important, as you said, how important mindset and having hope and believing that healing is possible is so important, because it leads to the behaviors, because the truth is, hope is your secret weapon. When your hope is high, your immune system is more competent and it's stronger. Your body is more energized and it's able to do more things. So I think those things are important regardless of what you do on your healing journey, is believe in yourself and maintain hope.
I love it. Thank you so much, Brad Pitzele, for coming on today's show. It was truly a pleasure. And, in the future, if you have more studies, more information to share, more stories, I'd love to have you back.
Thank you so much, Ashley. I'd love to come back.
I hope you enjoyed today's interview with Brad Pitzele and his story of healing. So many people suffer from autoimmune conditions, and so many people suffer from chronic Lyme disease, and these things can be overcome. I've helped dozens of clients. Since 2011, I've been a holistic health coach working with clients to help them heal and recover from chronic illnesses. And I have seen and helped my clients overcome autoimmune disease and Lyme disease and other conditions like type 2 diabetes and chronic adrenal fatigue, and hormone-related issues, even thyroid. And when you could take someone who's been told by doctors they'll have this for the rest of their lives, they have to be on these medications or for autoimmune, like suppressant, like immune suppressants, and they've just been sold a bill of goods, and then they come to me because they reject that, and so many people don't know that their body can heal itself, and they accept that reality from the doctor. But for the people who reject it, and they're seeking answers because they don't want to have these conditions, they don't want to suffer like this, they want to overcome, there are answers. Your body can heal itself. And this is one of the many ways. There are many ways to overcoming Lyme and to healing the body so the body goes in complete remission from autoimmune. There are several ways. And what I love about this one is how it's getting to the root, how it's getting to support the mitochondria to function correctly. And there's so many positive changes that are occurring, and that people can do it at any stage of health, whether they're bedridden to athlete. They're able to utilize this quickly. And of course, it's not the only thing you'll be doing. You should be supporting your body in a nutritious lifestyle, right? And looking to get rid of anything in your household that's tearing down your health. So their health isn't just doing one thing, but sometimes when people are, and maybe it's you, the listeners listening right now, because I was there, you're so sick, you can't revamp your diet and implement an exercise routine and, do the 10 things you've seen that experts are saying is good, because you are so exhausted and so sick. And that's why I love this specific therapy, is that even though the word exercise is in the word, exercising with specific, like with this oxygen, you could be bedridden as long as you're doing something to move your circulation, right? So, like he had mentioned, one way is put on a infrared blanket that's warming you up, getting your metabolism, getting your heart rate going, getting your metabolism going passively is one way you could do it. So anyone can do this and receive the benefits of it. And then they get a leg up. And then maybe then they have the energy to implement other things that are helping. But this is such a beautifully supportive way of helping the body quickly reverse the root cause of that chronic illness. And really what we're doing though is getting out of our own way, because who is doing the healing? What is doing the healing? Your body is. And we're giving the body what it needs. Stop doing the things that hurt it. Give it the things it needs. And we just get out of our own way. And the body's what's going to do that healing. So that's just, it's brilliant. It's simple. I love it. And I want to remind you to go to learntohealth.com/oxygen if you want to check it out and see if this is right for you. I'm really excited to get the kit for myself and my family. I think it's going to be awesome. And I've been actually wanting to do this for years. And I love that Brad has made it affordable to do it at home and has made it achievable, realistic to have it that everyone could be doing this. So that's exciting, because back when I looked into this type of therapy, you had to go somewhere. You had to go to a doctor's office, or like you had to go to some kind of special trainer. And it really was only being used for athletes or high performance athletes, maybe like Olympic teams where the athlete themselves isn't paying for it, right? It's part of the team is paying for it or part of their budget. Or they're, people who just had a ton of money to throw at it and they went somewhere to do it. Whereas you could do it in your own home. And that's why I love this. So thank you so much for listening. And thank you so much for being a listener of Learn to Health podcast. Please share this episode with those you care about, especially those who are struggling with chronic illness. This might be that missing link. This might be the key to helping them get a leg up and helping them to support their body's ability to heal itself. And you just never know. You never know. If you know anyone that's suffering, just keep sharing information with them, and you just might be the answer to their prayers. Have yourself a fantastic rest of your day.